And we are live on the dot, 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. If you're just signing on, my name is Ethan, and this is just Ethan. Hence the reason I'm alone. Anyway, if you're just signing on, please give us a shout out. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're viewing from. Love to say hello, or let us know how you're doing, or I don't know why I'm saying us, because again, it's just Ethan. So that's weird. Well, Jess is here. Jess is behind the scenes, ready to support. So it is us. We are a team, in fact. Hi, Yvonne. Yes, I know where you live, Yvonne. How are you in West Texas? Have things warmed up over there? I know it was a little further west, but I'm pretty sure you guys got it pretty cold as well. It's Molly. Hey, Molly. Dave Raven. What's up, Dave? Just 1 minute past the hour. We'll give it another minute, and then we'll get started on the ramblings and musings of 81 today. That sounds nice. Hi, Megan in New Hampshire. Hi, Babs. That's fun to say. Babs. Hi, Love Lana. 81 today. That's sounds good. Sounds cozy. I can get used to that. I think it was like low 60s here in Atlanta. So anyway, if you're just joining us, please say hello. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're from. We'll get started in just about 13 seconds. Sorry. Been a very long day. I always say that, but it's been a very long day. Nikki Bradley coming to us from Dublin. It's Babs from Virginia. Hi, Rick. Heather's in Canada. Els is in Canada also, Toronto. I got to 50s in New Hampshire. Well, I'm sure that's lovely. 50s in New Hampshire is probably, that's spring, isn't it? That's officially spring weather. All right. We are just past the 2-minute mark. So, hey, Michael Schramm, how are you, buddy? And there's Eileen. Oh, this is Joe from New Jersey. Hi, Joe. I was looking at, I almost said Jylene, but it didn't. Anyway, I'm just gonna give you a heads up. Hey, Janice in Hampton, Virginia. Good to see you. Just gonna give you a heads up. It's been a really long day, and I'm sure it has been for many of you as well. So we'll just be in this together. My brain is not at full capacity. You may be thinking it's usually not at full capacity, but oh, I'm Joe Eileen's son. Okay, cool. Nice to meet you, Joe. Or good to see you. And hi, Kendra from Virginia. First live I've been to. Well, welcome, Kendra. We're glad you're here. We hope you're not the last live you've been to. Anyway, with that, work has been hectic, I'm sure, for many of you as well. Hey, there's Martin Ingle. So yeah, but regardless, the show must go on. This is really not a show. This is just time for us to spend together, talk about OCD, anything else going in your life, answer questions. With that, let me get through the housekeeping, and then we can dive right in. There's Thomas Thackeray, superstar guest and good and awesome OCD advocate. And hi, Jane. Good to see you. All right, quickly. So yeah, my name is Ethan Smith. If you don't know me, I'm the national advocate for the International OCD Foundation, which simply means I have OCD and I can't stop talking about it. I was just saying hi to somebody. Don't pay attention to me. So this town hall is intended to serve as educational content and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline and should not be used if you are in distress or feel unsafe. If you're in a crisis or you ever feel suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room, call 911, call the suicide prevention hotline at 800-273-8255. And as always, we want to be respectful and kind to everyone in this group. This is on the internet, it's on social media where it will live. So it is public, but we like to create as safe a space as possible. So just keep that in mind as you're asking your questions or talking about vulnerable subjects. Disrespect will not be tolerated here. Jess has her finger on the boot button, and should you in any way test her, she's not afraid to pull the trigger. Okay, With all of that being said, let's see just if anybody else say, Brandon, it's good to see you. Um, love Lana, your girlfriend. I'm not sure what that means, but and hi, Nikki with a wave. Okay, cool. So as always, I like to start out with posing a question. Um, so I don't know this is an international audience. Hi, Lois in Long Island. I know it's an international audience, so it's different everywhere. But I was curious today about, with the world seemingly open up, with vaccines getting out there slowly but surely. Are you all like me having anxiety or maybe spiked OCD or just general concerns and worries about the world opening up, going back to what you were doing before? Did you never stop doing what you did before? Do you have concerns? Where are you at with the idea of sort of things picking back up? And we might be further out than we think from that, or maybe even closer, just depending on where you live. But I was curious to see where all of you are in terms of this idea of things getting back to normal and anxiety and maybe OCD fears or concerns around that. So I'll just let that percolate for a second and see what you guys come up with. Oh, Lisa Coyne is here. Hello, Lisa Coyne. I feel honored. I'm honored for everybody to be here, but good to see you, Lisa. Uh, Love Lana. You turned around and said hi to someone. I said your girlfriend, but I meant your fiance. Not fiance yet, but you never know. But yes, it was my girlfriend. Uh, my OCD does really latch onto the coronavirus. I have my OCD worries. Yes, I'm concerned I developed contamination OCD with COVID. Definitely spike in OCD and anxiety regarding pandemic. I haven't decided what feels safe versus what is safe. I am vaccinated, but still challenging. Hey, Stacy, it's good to see you. Um, I'm very anxious about things besides my band rehearsals and starting back in person. So it seems like there's definitely a lot of concerns. A lot of concerns about, definitely worried, but it's also going to be a great way to get more exposure. It's a great way to look at it. Um, I love that reframe for sure. Um, so, and Josie, I see your question. I will definitely get to your question in one sec. So do not feel like I missed it. I definitely see your question. So I think there's a lot of things to consider here. I'm going to go back and look at some of the comments that you guys have said, continue to weigh in. We'll also obviously get to Q&As, and you guys can ask about anything that you want, though I like to, have a conversation. Babs wrote, nothing feels safe because there are inconsistencies in people's respect with the virus as well. That's absolutely true. Everybody's got their own rules and lives by their own, what they deem safe and not safe, and it may not jive with what we feel is comfortable or within our rules that we've set for ourselves or the CDC guidelines. Oh, Eileen, I misread. It's Joe, actually. I misread Joe's comment. My OCD doesn't really latch onto the coronavirus. I have my own OCD worries. And really, let me just specify, I don't necessarily mean OCD fears around the coronavirus, just in general, life opening up. And let me give you an example. I think that for a lot of people, it was very jarring, very disconcerting, very upsetting, obviously. Not being able to go to work or having to work from home or being home with kids all day, a lot of triggers, moral scrupulosity issues, health contamination issues. But for a lot of people too, there was also a sense of relief because a lot of the responsibility felt lifted. For me, I always struggled and still do probably to a certain extent, going out and being social. I'm social with good friends, but especially when I was living in LA, going out and being seen, or, should I go to this club, or everybody's going out, hey, come with. I was never really super comfortable doing that for a variety of reasons, self-worth, weight. I had my own insecurities. So that's a good example of something that kind of went away with COVID. And yes, some people still go out and do stuff, but I know for me, not feeling like I had to go do that stuff and then suddenly it wasn't an option, I felt relieved, so maybe, I would be nervous moving back into that. So I don't necessarily mean OCD specific to COVID, but just the world that COVID created. and the OCD, may have been compounded by that in some way. But then, you know, we've all been sort of in this limbo for a year. So what does it look like for you all returning back? Or what is it going to look like in the next 2, 3, 6, 12 months? And are those things that you're really excited about? Are you really nervous about it? Are you scared? Do you have some new OCD fears or thoughts or anxiety? Dr. Reed Wilson is my doctor, and HS told me to just walk on in and get the shot. I don't know if we're talking about shots. Sorry, I wasn't reading. So yes, I'm concerned I developed contamination OCD with COVID. I understand that, Yvonne. And I know for a lot of us, we were definitely concerned about, best practices with COVID, amount of times for hand washing, using hand sanitizer. Babs wrote, definitely spike in OCD and anxiety regarding pandemic. Absolutely. And Stacy brought up a good point. I haven't decided what feels safe versus what is safe. I am vaccinated, but still feel a challenge. But it is still a challenge. I think, and we talked about this, that the world is so ripe with doubts. Now, it's that way anyway. The world is always full of doubts, way more doubts than we probably know what to do with, and it can definitely be overwhelming. Whether there are actually more doubts now than there were before, or we're just in on it because of everything, I think that the world does feel incredibly more uncertain because there's no uniform way to address things, that everybody's doing their own thing, cities, states, countries. There's no rhyme or reason. So, to Stacy's point, it feels like a challenge about what is safe versus what isn't safe. And so as we get back to life, the question is, how do you handle that? How do you deal with that? What's the best way to approach? Babs wrote, nervous. I'm not sure I will ever touch things unless necessary in public again. I think my hands will continue to be raw from cleaning. Yvonne wrote, same here, Babs. I'm sorry to hear that, Babs. I know that's difficult. Janine wrote, I have a feeling when people are not required to wear masks, I'm going to still feel that I need one. I totally agree with you. I'm worried about getting back to regular life because I've stayed so close to home for the last year. It feels overwhelming. Yes, absolutely agreed. And, when we're forced to face things, our tolerance for that distress can grow quite large. But when we aren't, right, we can get real comfortable to the situation. And then when we're asked to challenge ourselves again, even if it's something that wasn't challenging before, it can be really anxiety provoking. And that is something I think we're all facing. Even when I have the shot, I'm going to be super uncomfortable not wearing a mask. I mean, I think of people breathing in the same air completely differently than I did before, just because my OCD wasn't specific to that. But that seems weird to me. That we've spent the last year kind of avoiding everyone else. And now it's like, what will it be like to be in the same room and breathing the same air? It seems really foreign, doesn't it? Which seems really weird, but concerning. I just want to get to a few more statements and I'll dive in. Defender wrote, I had severe OCD about getting the vaccine, but I made it through it. I actually feel a little less worried about about things opening back up now that I'm vaccinated. I'm still taking the virus seriously. Absolutely, Defender. That makes total sense. But there's a lot of people that don't know when they're going to get vaccinated. And so it's super tricky. You have people that are vaccinated, some people that aren't, some people that wear a mask, some people that don't. Where do you go with all this? Lisa Coyne, if you're still watching, I'm going to touch on one of your favorite topics, which is values are your guiding star. Values are your guiding star when it comes to everything that's ahead of us. And really, what's interesting about this concept is it doesn't change without COVID. It doesn't change. Your values should always be your guide. And sometimes it's hard to determine what your values are, especially when you're in the depths of depression or struggling with OCD or anxiety or just completely overwhelmed. It's really hard to sometimes to identify values. But in a time like this, where there are no real set guidelines to follow, great question, Megan. What are values? That's an excellent question. And I'm going to get to that too. What do we do? what do we do? So in terms of COVID, I think we have to go by the science. The science is the CDC, and we've talked about this in the early stages of when we were doing live streams when COVID first broke out, which is literally, wash your hands for 20 seconds, wear a mask, 6 feet social distance. We know it's different. OCD will never be satisfied. So we can look at what the CDC suggests, and that's the best we can do, because we will drive ourselves crazy trying to guess what's next, or if they're right or if they're wrong. Yes, what they say changes, and research dictates something new every 2 weeks or a month or whatever. And that's true with anything, right? A medication that worked 10 years ago may cause this, that, and the other thing. Does it mean that we shouldn't have taken that medication all that time? I lived on Zantac. It really helped my stomach with acid reflux. Now they say it causes cancer, and they pulled it off the shelf. Am I going to second guess every move that I make? You can't. Definitely, if you have OCD, you can't do that. You can't live your life like that. So I think we can start with the simplest guideposts that are out there. And we made the suggestion early on in our COVID town halls, which was, what is in the US, we're following the CDC. If you're international, whatever your health governing body is. But for the US, the 20-second hand washes, I think they've given up on temperature taking. I'm not sure. And that's also concerning. But again, and the reason we do that is because, again, we can drive ourselves crazy and exhausted trying to figure out what is and what isn't. The best we can do is listen to the experts and cross a new bridge when we come to it, which is the hardest thing for us to do. Us individuals with OCD and anxiety, this idea of dealing with it when it happens versus preventing having to deal with it. It's very challenging, and I sort of live by this. I'm itching my nose. If you've joined me in the last 2 weeks, or the last two Just Ethans, my nose starts to itch. It's only just Ethan. Town halls, my nose doesn't itch. So I don't know if I'm allergic to the banner or if it's Nikki Bradley in Dublin, but I'm watching you because my nose itches. You guys are leaving great comments, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to scroll back to a lot of the questions, but this is definitely worth talking about. Because we're all on different paces, and Nikki Bradley's talking about slowing the vaccine over in Ireland. Summer wrote, I haven't left my house. I've only left my house 4 times in the last year, and that was only for dental appointments. This pandemic and the isolation has accelerated my OCD issues to the point where I don't know if I can ever go back to real life. Nothing seems safe to me, even if I get the vaccine. And I'm so sorry you feel that way, and that's valid. Those are valid concerns and feelings, and that's why I feel like this is a necessary subject, because we're entering. And Rick, I see your question. I'll get to that in one sec for sure. We're opening up a back to what regular life used to look like, and for some people, regular life was really challenging. I know for me, for a long time, it was. So that doesn't mean anything. That just because it's easy for someone else doesn't mean we should compare it to ourselves and think that it should be easy. At the same time, we've gotten used to a certain way of living with this, and things are going to change, and it's going to be even more changing as it was before. So how do we deal with this? Well, if you've had treatment for OCD and you've engaged in exposure response prevention, you are already pretty well equipped, which is the ability to deal with uncertainty and the discomfort that comes with dealing with uncertainty. So if you have some insight into exposure response prevention and other treatments of modality for OCD, congratulations, because you're already well armed for what's to come. And you were well armed before too. For those of you that have been really struggling with COVID, that's valid too. For those of you that have had exacerbation in OCD symptoms and hand washing or self-checking or scrupulosity, you are not alone. You are not alone at any stretch of the imagination. I am over vigilant when it comes to hand sanitizer. I never used hand sanitizer, not once before this pandemic. I hated hand sanitizer. I actually felt like all it did was move the dirt around. So I felt good washing my hands. I would eat, but I never used hand sanitizer until this pandemic. And now, My girlfriend will tell you, like, she uses like this, I think the appropriate amount of hand sanitizer, and I use half a bottle every time I go out somewhere. And yeah, I do the whole thing. So it's going to be super weird. But the question is, are we willing to be uncomfortable? And if we are willing to be uncomfortable, why are we willing to be uncomfortable? And the question is, well, the answer to that question is because we want to follow our values. Megan Wolf asked a great question. 7:15 p.m. What are values? So that's a great question. And values are things that you believe are important in the way that you live and work. They should determine your priorities, and deep down, they're probably what you strongly believe in. Values generally are not accomplished in a day or a week. They're never fully reached. Those are goals. We can talk more about dividing goals and values. Values are really guideposts for how you live your life, whether how you value your health, how you value your physical health or your mental health, how you value your friends, how you value love, how you value is helping others. Do you value work? Do you value being financially successful? There's a multitude of values. All our values can differ. It does not make one person any better or worse than anybody else for having different values. Megan, I don't think I've ever been asked what are values, but I think that's such a beautiful question. So thank you for asking that. Our values are important because when we identify our values, that gives us a guideline or a guidepost for what direction we should head. It's also important because OCD generally attacks the things that we care most about. So OCD will most of the time attack your values in some way, which is also why going after your values is important. So how does this work in terms of the world opening up, in terms of managing the uncertainty around COVID now and everybody doing their own thing and how life will look moving forward? I've been nervous because if people get vaccines, does that mean everybody's going to take off their mask all at once? Does that mean people are going to stop due diligence? When they post, hey, there's all this great news, that means that people are just going to let it all go. Makes me nervous for sure. But the tie-in here is that only you know your values. And that means that you have to do what's right for you. OCD is really good at muddying what your values are or what you think your values are. They're very good at confusing. OCD is the master of illusions, right? It wants to make you believe something that goes against your values. What clinicians always love saying, ego dystonic. You hear that word a lot, which is against your values, something that you don't want to do, but you're afraid you're going to do. I think that it's so important to identify what your values are and then how you can achieve those values, and let that dictate the rules for how you navigate the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. Because there are no rules. There are no set guidelines. Everything is changing. Everything is malleable. We're being asked to be very nimble right now. And being nimble and being malleable and change is really scary. Change can be really scary for those of us with OCD and anxiety. We don't like change. OCD doesn't like change. OCD is very rigid. OCD is not interested in flexibility. OCD wants what it wants when it wants it. So if you value work, if you value living, if you value getting outside, if you value nature, if you value friends, it's the same approach that it was when the pandemic started, which was, how do we create a life for me in this world that's meaningful? Under these new rules, how do I do this? So while we don't have answers that fit everyone, I don't know that we ever did. I would like to argue that values should always dictate how you live your life. And so for those of you, and I saw some, and I know I'm going to go back in 5 minutes and go back to some of the questions and read over. But I know for some of you that spoke about, compulsions that you're engaging in, or not ever feeling safe, or any of those things. Babs threw me a curveball. Great question. I'll read it in a second. If you, sorry, Babs' question was so good, it threw off my line of thinking. And I want to see what Janine wrote, because everybody's saying good advice. I was thinking it was mine, guess not. I think that living in accordance with your values and being willing to get uncomfortable is really how we move forward. Oh, right. So for those of you that are engaging in compulsions and feel weighted down and miserable by the complete uncertainty that you're facing, or just the OCD in general, really, it's the same as anybody else, which is find your values, locate what's important to you, and then ask yourself what's more important, the compulsion or the value. And then using, and I'm in no way minimizing or simplifying the process. That was weird. Simplifying the process of overcoming OCD and managing in a successful way. But I'm simply saying that identifying values and using those as a guiding light or a guiding star to help encourage and motivate and inspire you to want to move forward is a great place to start. So you don't necessarily need certainty. You aren't going to get it from the outside world in terms of what's safe and what isn't. You have to determine that for yourself. And it's very scary when OCD is yelling at your head what is right and what is wrong, because it makes you question everything. But you have to follow your values, and you have to take a chance. We don't have precise rules on crossing the street. We should go to a stop, an intersection where there's lines, and we should wait till the sign says walk. And we're not supposed to go out into traffic. At least that's what our parents told us. I don't know that I've seen any laws. I'm sure there may be the laws, but I don't know that I've seen anything that I learned at some point that said, do not step off the curb and walk in the street. So while we have some guiding principles, I don't know that we have 100% exact rules on how to cross the street. I think that we have to rely on some of our own instincts and our own values to determine whether it's appropriate to cross the street at a certain time and when it isn't. And this is really jaywalking. Hey, you got to take the chance, though. And it really, this is just a giant analogy for, life is crossing the street, and we can't have certainty that a car won't hit us, but we're going to make our best assumptions. We're going to make our best educated guesses. We're going to follow our values to the best of our ability. We're going to ignore OCD and let it talk, and be willing to live with that discomfort and that uncertainty and that anxiety, and let it all be there, so we can cross that street, so we can move forward, so we can move into life. So as we approach, I can't help it, my nose itches. As we approach whatever's next for all of us, that sounds super cryptic. That wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be positive. Whatever's next as the world opens up, our process shouldn't change. We should not be looking for the definitive answer on how to proceed or what to do, because we're never going to get it. We're never going to get it. And especially when it comes to OCD, even if we did, even if the president or whoever said, we have all the data, this is exactly how it's going to play out, guess what? OCD will poke 4,000 holes in that, which is why at the end of the day, we don't wait for uncertainty, because even if we got it, OCD will doubt it. Let me go back up and get to some questions. I rambled. Hopefully some of that made sense. I'll live with the uncertainty that it probably didn't. I want to get back to Josie's question at the beginning, because I promised her I didn't want to ignore it. But Babs, I liked your curveball, so stick with me because I want to get to it. So Josie asks at 7:05 p.m., what kind of advice can you give to a husband with OCD and a wife who has ADHD, management of anxiety? Great question, Josie. So I'm always careful to give advice because, again, I'm not a therapist, just guy with OCD and also anxiety. I also don't have a large background in ADD or ADHD, although I do have some friends with it pretty severely, so I'm familiar with the way it manifests. The best advice, and I know I sound like a broken record, but the best advice I can give you is effective treatment. For both the ADHD and the OCD. That may look like therapy, that may look like medication, or a combination of both, which is proven to be most effective. Again, I'm not so read up on ADHD, but I can tell you for OCD, exposure response prevention therapy is absolutely the best advice I can give you. Finding a clinician in your area, which is easier now than ever because they're all virtual. So at least I know that can be expensive, and monetarily, it's still an obstacle. But in terms of geography, if you're in the state, then you can go to anyone, and you can access the IOCDF resource directory, which has a list of clinicians, OCD specialists in your area. We always ask that you interview them. There's great articles on the IOCDF website as well about asking the right questions, but I can't emphasize enough treatment and therapy and better understanding. One thing I can't stand, and I say I can't stand it, but it just frustrates me in a caring way. I get upset about it. Is we try to guess. We try to guess the right things to do. We kind of guess how to handle it. Nothing wrong with seeking therapy. Nothing wrong with getting help. Nothing wrong with accessing experts that can help navigate. It's only going to make your life fuller. So Josie, my advice to you is to start off by reaching out to some experts, and I think you'd be able to find an OCD specialist is also usually a licensed marriage family therapist or licensed social worker or a PhD or a PsyD. They'll probably have plenty of expertise, not only in OCD, but ADHD and other diagnoses as well. So, and especially, when you're married and dealing with two different diagnoses, that can definitely interfere with the marriage. And so, as I like to say, we want you married to each other, not your disorders. And for a long time, this isn't a marriage analogy, but my parents they weren't parenting me, they were parenting my OCD, and they weren't married to each other. They were married to my OCD because they were constantly reassuring and enabling and doing all the things that they could for my OCD. So just getting that knowledge and information, seek therapy is the first step. If you're already seeing a therapist or something like that, feel free to let me know. And we can talk about next steps perhaps. You can also email me. I'll give it my email at the end, but hopefully that gives you a start, Josie. Let me scroll down here and get to some more questions for sure. And if you have questions, please load them in the comment thread. Love to hear them. And by the way, Defender, I think that's awesome that you went out and got the vaccine. I think you said Reed was your therapist. Reed is awesome. He was on our last town hall. I'm a big fan of Reed's, and sometimes you just have to go out and do it. And you wrote, I actually feel a little less worried about things opening back up now that I'm vaccinated. I'm still taking the virus seriously. Less worried is great. We can't expect the worry to be totally gone. We can just do what we can do and move forward. So that's awesome. And again, okay, thank you. Yes, husband OCD was exasperated when the pandemic hit, but he took time off and is doing better slowly with contamination anxiety. I'm glad to hear, Josie. Is he doing better because of treatment and therapy, or just by staying avoidance, essentially, by avoiding the things that trigger him? Let me keep scrolling down here. Pardon me. Not as quick on my seat today as I Ali wrote, it feels like a lot of the progress I've made on my social anxiety over the past years has been erased because we've been isolating for a year and I'm out of practice. This is a great point, and I feel this applies to everyone, not just social anxiety, but OCD, anxiety, all the things that we've practiced. I mean, so many people that had gotten their hand washing under control are now, obviously, you've mentioned it, really struggling with it. I think you put this really beautifully, Ali. If we can post this actually at Ali Mills' comment just at 7:12, thank you. So she says, lots of progress in social anxiety over the past few years have been erased because we've been isolating for a year and I'm out of practice. I would ask you to really think about the word erased, because you also say out of practice. So what that tells me is you have skills, you have tools, you have experience. The idea of getting back out there seems absolutely terrifying because you haven't had to, and that's kind of what I was talking about when I don't have to go to clubs, or not that I was a big club goer. I look terrible in a sequin shirt, but just saying. But you haven't had to go do social things. That social pressure has been alleviated to a certain extent because in-person social gatherings has sort of been a no-no. But again, careful with that word erased, because we're very black and white thinkers. And I know you don't know, I know you don't really believe that everything has been erased because you wouldn't have said I'm out of practice. Out of practice simply means that you still have the skills and tools. You just might be rusty at it. No different than, I played the piano as a kid. If I sat down to piano now, I would definitely be out of practice. I would definitely be rusty, but I could probably find the keys. I probably would know where C, D, E, all the way to C were, and I could probably bang out some chords and some songs, and I probably have a bunch of flat notes and wrong notes, and it's probably going to sound pretty messy. But as I get back into it, it's going to sound better and better and better and better. And that's what I'm alluding to, Ali, is the anticipatory anxiety of going back is probably much worse than the actual going back into it. Even though I know there's other things at play now, like COVID and what does it feel like to just go back into a social setting? But I would give yourself more credit. I think out of practice is a great way to put it. I wouldn't say the last few years have been erased. They're still there. And I think that means that, the likelihood of you going back to where you were is unlikely. I think that you're just out of practice. The anticipatory anxiety feels very overwhelming, which is completely valid and understandable. But you have the skills and tools, and it's time to take those out. And what I would suggest, Ali, is if you haven't already, ease into it. I wouldn't start by, the world opens up and you go to a giant stadium party. What are things you can do now that are safe? Have you gone to the grocery store recently? Is that really scary for you? Is that something you'd be willing to do? Start small. Nothing wrong with starting small and taking your time and easing into getting back into some social settings that may be difficult right now and slowly build up over time. But great comment. I really appreciate that. And for anybody, we all think in the OCD tendency is to think in black and white. We're very black and white people for the most part. And so I think this applies to everyone here. This idea of like, oh my gosh, I was doing good. And now with COVID, everything's back to the way it was. I in no way know anybody's exact journey. I wouldn't ever presume to, but I will challenge you to question your thought or belief that you've been pushed back all the way to where you were before. I would ask you to do a gut check on that and to ask yourself if that's really the case, or if you've definitely been dealt a blow with COVID or the situation. And yes, your OCD may be way worse than it was with the hand washing or whatever, and or anxiety and social, but are you really going back out into the world with nothing, with no skills, with no tools? Do you still have those? And is it just about calling upon them and resisting a little bit more, or becoming more of an OCD warrior? Just things to think about. Thank you, Ali. I appreciate your comment. Juan wrote, I am concerned about going back to school, getting back to work, and just not being home all day because my house is my safe spot. I think our houses has become our safe spot, Juan, for a lot of us. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. And it's just about making where you are your safe spot, because you're going to follow your values and live your life and do the best you can. And, safe is a tricky word because we associate safe with comfortable, and life isn't comfortable. And so, what are things we can do to make the discomfort more tolerable? And there's Megan's question about what are values to make way slowly. Nikki wrote, we are very slow over here with vaccines, so I won't have mine till somewhere between April and June. I have diabetes, so I haven't been out except for grocery shopping. I'm very nervous about getting out there when I can. I'm also scared my contamination OCD might get worse. I've worked so hard on it. I don't want to go backwards. What's interesting, Nikki, and thank you for that comment, is that I don't think anybody wants to go backwards, and that's valid, but we don't want to go backwards because we didn't try. It's kind of like love. If you don't let down the walls, you can't really fall in love. But in doing so, you can get hurt pretty bad, right? You let down that guard, you really become vulnerable. There's a chance at real heartbreak. But there's also that chance at a beautiful love story. I think approaching OCD is the same way. I think we have to take a chance. We have to take a risk. We have to get uncomfortable. The ends justify the means, and the rewards are well worth it. And so I hear you. I don't want you to go backwards. I don't want to go backwards. I know nobody here wants to go backwards. But what's interesting, and I always say this, is, and if you hear nothing else, hear this, is that in this whole world that we talk about embracing uncertainty, nothing is certain but our focus and our behavior, that the whole world is uncertain and we really can't have certainty. Here's the giant paradox in this whole thing. I am certain that if you always listen to OCD, you will not have a life to live. You will not be able to follow your values and goals. You will not be able to live a meaningful life. I am certain of that. I'm 100% certain of that. And if that resonates with you, maybe you're in a spiral. You're experiencing that now. Is if you choose OCD every time, I am certain the OCD will win. Kind of interesting in a whole world of uncertainty and embracing uncertainty. The one certainty that you have is choosing OCD is not choosing life. So then you have to ask yourself, well, then if I'm certain not to live the life I want if I choose OCD, maybe it's worth taking a chance. Maybe it's worth living with some of that uncertainty to have a chance at the life that you want, a full life. I never say a happy life or a joyful life. I don't think that's possible to have a happy life the rest of your life. I'm not saying can't have happiness, can't have joy, but I like full life. Full life comes with all the emotions: happy, sad, angry, frustrated, all the stuff. But I'd much rather feel all the stuff than be in my head for 9 hours. So if listening to OCD is certain, then is it worth leaning into the uncertainty and taking a perceived risk in an effort to regain or gain the life that you feel like you've never had by seeking treatment, doing ERP, ACT, or if you've had treatment, re-engaging in your skills and tools? Don't let OCD off the hook. Become a warrior again, even though it feels harder. Babs wrote, human error can happen with this virus and the world in general, so I take my own measures to protect myself and others equals OCD. That's it. Uncertainty, man. There's no certainty, and we can do everything we can to prevent. But in doing that, we usually create the world that we're afraid of. Prior to COVID, I was talking to somebody that was, so afraid of getting sick, they never left the house and they became homebound, and just were in bed the whole time. And I said to this individual, do you know who else stays in bed all the time? Somebody who's sick. They literally created the world that they were afraid of. And that's what OCD tends to do. OCD tends to create the very thing that we don't want in an effort to protect ourselves. So I think that we have to be willing to live with the uncertainty and doubt, which again, how do we? We keep our values very present, very much in front of us. I want to jump, where was Babs? Really slightly snarky, but really great. Oh, there you are, Babs. Okay, I'm going to come right back to you. I'm going to jump up to Rick's question right before yours. Right before yours, I turned into a pirate. That was weird. Somewhat unrelated to the topic, question about vaccines. Why is the CDC and local health department not prioritizing patients with mental illness as they open up vaccination to these disabilities, 16 to 64, especially when there's ample scientific data proving they are considered at high risk for COVID-19? Is there advocacy focusing on this? Great point, Rick. I haven't asked that question. I think that's very valid. I think the majority of it is stigma. I don't think people still, they haven't seen the data. It's hard for me to speak on that because you know what? I need to process that question. It's a great point. And I think that if we need to recognize mental illness in general as a disease, OCD as a disease and a disorder, then it should come with the perks of having it. Can we get our shot sooner? So I think that's really that's a great point. And I think part of it is just lack of understanding, and their perceived belief that, oh, well, someone with an anxiety, isn't at risk as opposed to somebody with an autoimmune disorder. So I also think, though, that we have to give grace to this whole process because although it feels like a giant cluster, um, it's new. And I think everybody to some extent is doing the best they can. I don't in any way want to make excuses for poor decisions that have happened, but I think, everybody's doing the best they can do under the circumstances, or, and they hopefully have our best interests in mind. I know it doesn't feel that way all the time. Um, that's a great point, Rick. And I think what will happen over time is that as we continue to advocate, as we continue to destigmatize and educate around mental illness, I will hope that that changes. I think it's just too early. I think that just people don't recognize mental illness as synonymous with physical illness. Um, so I think that's a great point. I would like to say that advocacy is focusing all the time on this, just in terms of advocacy overall. But that's an awesome point, Rick. And if you want to talk about it more, again, this goes for anybody. If you agree, this is a conversation. I've gone from Ethan blabbing for 45 minutes in Q&A to like, this is a conversation. And so I'm gonna give out my email at the end. If you agree, if you disagree, I just want to hear from you. I want to have a conversation about everything. Or if you have any other thing, anything else you want to discuss. Babs, I have not forgot about you. Stay tuned. Debbie wrote, I think you need to use what's best for you. I believe we all know what is our OCD is, and if it's that, move past it and or get treatment. If not, and you feel best wearing a mask, then you do. I don't think they really know what the new normal is, and we need to live in the moment, and each day will lead us to the answer. Live by your values, not by your OCD. Well put, Debbie. Well put. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that. Stacy wrote, hi, Stacy. I hope you're still here. I just went and got tested, even though I got my first vaccine shot, and the girl opened the swab, looked at it, and said, ooh, and walked away and came back with the same swab to swab my nose, and now I feel contaminated. I should have had her get a new swab. Maybe. But, it's done. So we move forward. But I'm sorry that happened. I wonder what the ooh was. Okay. Babs wrote, this is when I was talking about control. Let's put this on the big board, Jess. 7:24 p.m. Babs wrote, I do value control. So where does where does that come into play? Control and safety surrounds by OCD. I'm still wondering why my nose itches during this, just Ethan. So weird. So I'm curious, Babs. I think we all value control to a certain extent. Control feels good. I think control, for the most part, is an illusion. I think that we talk ourselves or help make ourselves believe that we have control over a lot more than we actually do, because it's just more comforting. If we probably identified all the things we don't have control over, we'd probably be pretty afraid and scared. So we have control over two things. These are the only two things we have control over. This is scientifically proven. We have control over our focus, and we have control over our behavior. So we can control what we focus on, and we can control how we react to what we focus on and how we behave. Anything beyond that is out of our control. So I think we can value, maybe control can be a value, but what are you trying to control? If you're trying to control health, well, health is the value. And then can we control it? Probably not, but you can take steps to do the best you can. You can work out, and you can eat right. You can meditate, self-care, eat healthy. I already said that, eat right. So safety also maybe a value. We all want to stay alive, but I can relate safety back to health. I can relate safety back to having a roof, work. I think control comes down to how we reach our goals and how we maintain our values. And if that's the case, it's still recognizing what we do and don't have control over. And then from there, we can make decisions and that are in our best interest, but we still won't have certainty around it. So I think your OCD values complete and total control, because complete and total control give you perceived uncertainty or perceived certainty. Can't have certainty. We don't have certainty about tomorrow. So then it becomes what's living into our values, what is doing the best we can as fallible people, as human beings. We're not perfect. So instead of looking at what you've, and I'd be curious, Babs, to your thought if I'm touching on this, if I'm way off the mark, but I would question that control is your value. I'd be curious what you're interested in controlling, what's important to you, and what you want to have certainty around. Let's see here. Juan said, "Oh, I hate when apologies, my screen. When there's a lot of comments, it jumps up, and then I lose my place. So let me find where I was. I was at Juan's. Okay, Juan, can you talk about false memory, especially the ones where there is no actual memory, just doubt about the past? Haven't heard about it. Haven't heard much about it. False memories is when something may have is when you feel something may have happened in the past. You can actually visualize it. You can see it happening. See it as if you did it, and it feels like a memory, and thus the attribution of false memories. What can make this even feel more real is the feelings associated with false memories. Feelings are not facts, but feelings definitely make us feel that whatever the thought is more real. And so, especially the ones when there's no. So, is it a memory? Is it imagination? I would point you to, and we can talk. False memories is a whole other topic, and I really want to dive into this. I don't know, Jess, if you have access to John Hirschfield's article on false memories, but it's one of the better ones it's one of the best ones actually that I've read. Also, plug Shannon Shai's new book. I think it came out. He has a chapter on false memories as well, Juan. Shoot me an email, remind me about that. And in the meantime, we'll see if we can find the link to Hirschfield's article about false memories, which is excellent. But let me see if I can get you some additional info. But that's some basics about it. And I will tell you the short of it, just like any other OCD, living with the uncertainty that may or may not have happened, and living with the uncertainty that if it's around some sort of harm or hold on one second, I'm checking out the false memory. 2017. Yeah, that's it, Jess. Thank you. Awesome job. Living with the uncertainty that you may or may not have, even if you remember it, even if you think you remember it, even if it feels that way. It's most likely OCD. And even with that little seed of doubt, that little seed of doubt can be real loud. But we have to be willing to be that horrible person. We have to be willing to be that killer, that murderer, or that person that may have touched that child. Whatever the fear that may have happened is, we have to be willing to live with that doubt. It's super uncomfortable. False memories is tricky and feels, I think icky is a good word to describe it, because it feels so real. And even with my OCD, I didn't have false memories, but it felt real. But again, it's embracing the uncertainty and using skills and tools and ERP to navigate that. I think Jess will post a link. She found it. And Juan, email me. Let me know what you think. Lindsay asked, do you know of any groups for existential OCD? I don't know of any groups offhand, but I will tell you there's two great communities you can access where I know there's tons of conversation on the topic. One is the IOCDF's own online community, Health Unlocked. Jess will put a link to it. There are tons and tons of threads and tons of conversations. And at any given time, they're talking about a variety of topics. So I'm sure you'll be able to connect with those that talk about existential or struggle with existential OCD. Also, the app NoCD, NoCD. It's a free app available on the App Store and Google Play. They also have a massive online community. Also the same, talking about a bunch of community threads and individuals. And I guarantee you can find conversations around existential OCD as well. Also, if you want to email me, I'm happy to do some further research and see if I can't find some things for you as well. Josie wrote, thank you, I have ADHD and he has OCD contamination. Thank you for that. On that. Sunny wrote, I spend thousands on therapy. It is worth it. It is worth it. And it's a shame it costs thousands. It should be accessible and affordable. And that's what we're working on. Josie wrote, thank you. Where do we find virtual exposure therapy for him? Great question. Like I said, if you go to the resource directory and type in your zip code, you can, a number of options will come up. You're also more than welcome to either email me at the email I'll give at the end or the IOCDF, and we can direct you based on where you live. Sorry, I'm just reading this. Janine Watkins, I know it's just so hard for me. I made it through 4 dental appointments so far and have a medical coming up, but afterward I count down 2 weeks to when I'm safe again. But I agree, medical and dental appointments are probably the safest place to go, much better than the grocery store or workplace. So I'm going to talk about this, Summer. I haven't read all of your threads, or Janine and Summer, and all of your back and forth, but so I can relate this to something that I was struggling with when I was really ill, and that was food poisoning. Food poisoning, if I ate chicken or eggs, I was pretty certain I was going to get food poisoning. It was raw. There was bacteria, norovirus, Ebola, not Ebola, not Ebola. I don't think you can get Ebola from salmon. Salmonella. What's the other one? What's the other bacteria? I'm completely forgetting, but salmonella, or it starts with an E, right? Anyway, every time, so I had just started exposure response prevention therapy, and E. coli. Yes, thank you, Jess. I knew it started with an E. E. coli, salmonella, all that stuff. But every time I ate chicken or eggs, I thought I was going to have severe food poisoning, and it scared the crap out of me. And so every day in ERP for lunch, they would make me eat chicken or eggs. And every day that clock would start over for me because I knew that it would usually manifest in 24 to 72 hours. So after 24 hours, I knew, okay, maybe 50%, 48 hours, 25%. And then at 72, I was clear sailing. But since they were triggering me every day, the clock kept starting over and over and over again, counting through that 72 hours. So I totally get counting the incubation period of COVID, time to wait, things like that. I also, by the way, I want to touch on, hey, Chelsea, I want to touch on those of you that have pre-existing conditions, because I know it feels that much more threatening, and it might be. And we talked about this as well, but again, comes down to values. But I didn't want to let you feel ignored. I did read that. But the point is that, did you go to the grocery store before? Did you go to the workplace before? Did you go to the doctor? What did you do before? What are people doing now? You can usually gauge also what is I'm not even going to use the word normal, but what is reasonable. And again, I think Debbie hit it really well. You have to do what's right for you, but you also can't listen to OCD, right? And so if you need food, you can order out, but if you're going to the grocery store before, and a lot of people are going to the grocery store, might be a good idea to go to the grocery store once. Maybe it's for 5 minutes with a mask. You stop in, you get one thing, you leave. And if you haven't had any type of treatment, maybe, again, it's a process. Nobody's asking you to do things you're not comfortable with, but this whole thing is about being uncomfortable. And so, I get the countdown thing, but as long as we count down, as long as we want that certainty that it's not going to happen, our life is just going to be revolving around avoiding and making sure that doesn't happen. At what point, how much of your life are you giving up to avoid losing or giving up your life? Sort of the question you have to ask yourself. How often these live streams? I find them helpful and I want to make sure I plan for them. Great question, Jay. Good question. This particular live stream is every other Tuesday. So not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after at 7 p.m. I was just going to say, if you check out this website, it has all the virtual programming the IOCDF is having forever. And we have at least 2 live streams a week with me and my co-national advocate, Liz McIngvale, who has something tomorrow. And yes. And with that, it is just about 8 o'clock. So let me just quickly scroll down, just make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm going to answer one more question. And I apologize if I didn't get you guys. This is fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for the advocacy, for the support of one another. And it's fantastic. And I get the question all the time. How do I become an advocate? Like, you guys are all advocates, just supporting one another. Y'all are awesome. I'm going to quickly wrap up with this question. I promised Jess we would be done at 8. I will keep my promise because I'm sure it's 7 Central Time. No, I'm kidding. Quickly, Angela asked, how far into your ERP therapy was it before you knew it would change your life for the better? Do you still go for tune-ups? Great question. ERP for me never stops. I always do ERP. The difference is it's important to know that the way you do ERP and treatment and therapy is not the way you do it the rest of your life. When you're in treatment and therapy, it can feel exhausting. Yeah, thank you. It can feel exhausting. ERP for now is almost involuntary. I don't necessarily notice when I do it. I just do it because I've been doing it for so long. I also didn't necessarily, there's no time frame. It's different for everybody. It's like working out and losing weight, your own pace. It's systematic. But it was for me when I started to notice a huge difference. It was when I wasn't expecting it and I wasn't looking for it. Sort of like when you have that pain and you pay attention for 4 or 5 days, you're like, is this thing going to go away? And then 2 weeks later, you realize it went away, and like, oh yeah, that pain that I had. That's what OCD was like for me. OCD was really challenging. ERP was really challenging until it wasn't. And then I was like, huh, that's interesting. Things got easier. It just kind of, and that's the way it has to be. You really have to focus on the long-term goal, which is it's not going to happen right away. You're not going to feel instant relief or even relief in the first week or first month. Hopefully you do, but you can't base it on the emotions and the feelings that come with it. You really have to, I always say long-term pain, short-term gain. No, short-term, God, I'm tired. What do I always say? Can somebody help me with this? Short-term pain, long-term gain. I always say, the pain that you invest now is worth the pleasure of the rest of your life. So it's different for everybody, but you do reach that point where life is better. Liz and I have had 2 conversations about this on live streams. While there is no cure, maintenance and management is achievable. And I think we think that what that looks like is being engaged in ERP and treatment all the time. And that's not it at all. Just like with diabetes. Hey, Nick Talk, just like with diabetes, you can have days, weeks, months where you don't even know you have it or you forget, and then it could pop up and you have to deal with it. And once you reach maintenance and management, that's how OCD works. And sometimes days, weeks, months, I forget I completely have it. Other times it's really loud, annoying, and obnoxious, and I really have to use skills and tools. And sometimes I compulse too. I'm not perfect. Do you still go for tune-ups? That's a great question too. I think tune-ups are really important if you need them and you find yourself regressing. I see an OCD specialist. I've seen one for the last, after I got out of residential, I've seen one for the last 11 years now. We actually just had our 500th appointment last week. I see her every week. Believe it or not, we don't do ERP in session. We talk about life, but I will say that if a period of time comes up when I'm really struggling, she will throw out ERPs for me to do. And I'm a very, very big believer in boosters or tune-ups, as you say. I think they're fantastic. And if you see yourself sliding, or if you're struggling with something, or you're going through a big milestone, or you're about to go off to college, maybe connecting again with your therapist if you're not seeing them regularly, and having a week or 2-week booster session can be really effective. Just reacquainting yourself with the skills and tools, really, really helpful. But do it for you. There's no set time limit. I wish I could tell you after 2 weeks of ERP, your life's going to change for the better. I think that comes down to a little bit of certainty and wanting to know. But I can tell you that it works. I can tell you that if I can get better, anybody can get better. That's always been my messaging for the last 9 years I've been advocating. And so dive in head first, embrace it, get uncomfortable. Listen and say yes. That's the secret to therapy and treatment. Listen and say yes. We overcomplicate it. And hopefully that answers your question. And with that, let me just scroll down and make sure. I want to thank everyone. Shay wrote every day is ERP for me. You're welcome, Stacy. You're welcome, Yvonne. Always look forward to seeing you too, or at least your name. Summer wrote, thank you. First time watching. I found this interesting. Thanks for Metro Detroit. You're very welcome. I hope you come back. With that, stay tuned. Few announcements you might want to hear. So as always, I want to thank the IOCDF and Jess behind the scenes for pulling out all the links and E. coli. That was clutch. And thank you so much, Angela. It's very sweet. I appreciate you saying that. She put up the link before for all the virtual programming, iocdf.org/peace of mind. That will tell you about everything coming up. Speaking of coming up, just announced the Faith and Mental Health Conference. This is our first ever Faith and Mental Health Conference. It is now open. It is an online conference. Let's see. It'll bring together a diverse group of faith leaders, therapists, and those with lived experience for a one-day event. It's Friday, May 21st from 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern. The agenda features both joint panels as well as individual discussions group for anyone who is interested in the intersection between faith and OCD and related disorders. Some sessions will also be offered in Spanish. Registration for the event is free with the option to make a donation to the IOCDF. All are welcome. So May 20, what have we learned today? May 21st, 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern. That's a Friday. Free Faith and Mental Health Conference. It's an incredible opportunity. I think the intersection of faith and mental health is crucial. That's why we've made a concerted effort to talk about it and address it. So something that's coming up shortly that I hope you attend or sign up for. Quickly, there are 2 surveys that are on the IOCDF website that I encourage you to go on. They need your input. Anxiety and athlete survey and the anxiety and faith-based community survey. I don't want to take up the rest of your time because we're running behind, but you can check out both the links to the surveys on the IOCDF website. Just I'm not 100% sure if there's links directly to those. I know there's SurveyMonkey links. I can actually, you know what? I don't know if Jess, if you have them right here, but I'll post them in the private chat. So you can just copy and paste them if you want to, for everybody that they can just click on and make it real easy for everybody to fill those out. And then last but not least, tomorrow, Wednesday, 3:10, 12 p.m. Eastern, Lunch and Learn with Dr. Liz, my cohort, OCD and food-related issues. Her guest is Beth Brawley, who is fantastic. So if OCD and food-related issues speaks to you, you'll definitely want to tune into that tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. Last but not least, if you haven't already, you want to be notified of all the programming the IOCD is having over the next month, please be sure to subscribe and follow on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch. In addition to our Peace of Mind, you'll get notifications when you're online, letting you know that the live stream was scheduled and going to start or even in progress. So with all of that, lastly, my email address. If you're still around, please don't hesitate to email me. You can email me at justethan@iocdf.org. I answer those emails personally. If you want to talk about anything that we've discussed during this conversation, if I didn't get to a question that you want answered, or you have thoughts, or even topic ideas for upcoming streams, please email me there. Never hesitate to email the foundation as well at info@iocdf.org. You can email them for anything at all that you need. They will always get back to you. With that, a lot of words. With that, have a wonderful Tuesday evening. Thank you so much for hanging with us and for your amazing advocacy and comments and contributions. Stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels. Don't let OCD off the hook. And we'll see you next time. Good night.